Indulge me in a moment's silence in their memory, please. Thank you. And we had recently we've had a bit of sad news in that one of our councillors, Councillor Ray Matthews, is in hospital with a heart condition, from what I can gather. So we send our thoughts and sympathies to his wife and family. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank all our parish council members for their work for the last year. It has been a difficult year. There's been a lot of stuff going on, and there's an awful lot of stuff going on in the near future. What with developments around the area and with Huawei coming, the Genome campus, the development, the iconic site, and as we all know, the infrastructure. So there's a lot of stuff in there that we are all fully engaged with. And lastly, but not least, is because of the ever-changing playing field that we have got and the way things are moving on quite fast, I would like to also thank our clerk and assistant clerk for their hard work. And without them, our job will be 100 times worse, and we wouldn't know what we were doing. So again, with that all out of the way, I'd like to now officially start the meeting. So may I have any apologies for absence, please?
Tony Orgy, Kieran Cooper, Beck Blackstone, Rajni Pavia, Ray Matthews, Mike Owers and Grace.
Thank you. Declarations of interest for this meeting. No. Oh, you've all been good children. Right, minutes held from the meeting of 1st of May 2018. I will just go through them by number. All got a copy? Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Might have a proposer, but those are correct. David, the seconder please. Janet. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, no matters arising, so moving on to the first presentation, and I would like to also thank Mr. Russell, the principal at the Sawston Parish College, for coming along. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Where would you like to stand?
Wherever's best for you.
Which way to lobby? Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Jonathan Russell. I am the principal at Sawston Village College. I started in my current role in September. I have been working at the school since 2005 as an assistant principal and then as deputy principal. So I know the college inside out, I'd like to think, and I see quite a few familiar faces in the audience. Lovely to see you. Parents and class colleagues, people I've worked with. I've been working with some people around the table as well, Councillor Cuffley in particular, on a recent project. So it's been a very busy year, shall we say. You have a report in your handout, in your pack, I can refer you to. It's an annual report. It just gives you a flavour of what we've been trying to do this academic year. Jonathan Colpin, who you all know, has moved on. He's now the new Chief Executive Officer of Anglian Learning. We are a trust of 4 secondary schools and growing, and 3 primary schools. And Jonathan has moved, now works out of Boston. He's the CEO of our trust, and then he left me with everything at Sawston, which they kind of do. But it was we've worked together for many years, so we've been trying really hard to, and I've been trying particularly hard this year, to maintain the same high standards and expectations and the strong ethos that I think the school is. And at the back of everything that I do, I'm very, very keen to uphold Morris's vision of community education. That's very important to me. We have on our doorstep, I hope you agree, a superb, inclusive, comprehensive school. We have our challenges, like every other school. We're under great financial pressure as well, but we're doing our best to maintain standards and to improve them. And I would like to just pay tribute to my staff, if you may indulge me. I have a fantastic staff, 60 full-time teachers and another 60 support workers who do a tremendous job every day under increasing pressure. And I also have fabulous pupils, 1,057 and rising. So we're in a very good position. The report just gives you a flavour of all the different sorts of things that we have done this year. We have had continuing success in arts, lots of music productions. We did a lovely, I don't know if anyone came to see Oh What a Lovely War, our drama production in the autumn term. As part in celebration of, commemoration of some of the celebrations that were going on of World War I, World War II. It went very well. We have had our annual concerts at West Road and Great St Mary's. Music continues to thrive at the college. We were slightly worried because after 42 years we lost Janet McLeod, who's our superb head of music. But Janet knew very well what she was up to, and we had great succession planning, and Claire has seamlessly stepped into her shoes, and the college has continued to thrive. We have about a fifth of the school involved in music activities of some sort. Lots and lots of clubs. We have one of our largest Year 7 intakes this year of 237 young people. We have this fantastic Freshers' Fair where they all came to sign up, and many of those young people are involved in our extracurricular activities, which I would say are still really varied and rich, and only work again because of the volunteers of our staff. So as you can see on the board there, board? I feel like I'm in a lesson. I'll be asking questions again. You can see that we had Heidi Allen come to do our presentation evening this year and gave an interesting speech. It was when she was a Conservative MP. I could sense the change was coming in her address. And lots of various other activities up there we've been involved in, and we've done a number of trips as well this year. So we continue to be a caring school. That's important to us. We have wraparound care for our young people, a very strong pastoral team, very strong provision, and we also have academic success. So we were recently, I received, this seems to strike me as an odd timing, to be fair, but when I returned from the Easter break, I had this letter from Nick Gibb, Minister of State for School, Minister for Schools, congratulating us on being the top 6% of all state-funded mainstream secondary schools in the country for one of the measures, which was the EBAC, which I thought was a good success. And we're also, if you can see the left-hand side, you can't quite see it, but top 5 schools in Cambridgeshire for academic performance last year. So our young people worked really, really hard and did an excellent job last year. We are continuing to work really hard with the current cohort to try and help them. They go into exam mode next week on Monday. They will be fully engaged in their examinations, so we wish them success. So academically we're doing very well. Pastorally, working really, really hard with some very demanding and vulnerable, challenging cases, and extracurricular is thriving as well. We've had a few challenges with the building, which you'll see in the report. And if you go and visit it at the moment, you'll see a huge scaffolding around the Henry Morris Hall, which has been out of action for virtually all of this term, really. We've had scaffolding up in there because the roof, part of the ceiling, the plaster, came loose and collapsed. We've improved the roof on the outside, we've got funding for that, and the ceiling. We've done the roof for the library as well. So we've invested a lot in the infrastructure and maintenance. That was something that I worked really hard with my head of operations, who we employed this year as well, to try and improve the infrastructure with the limited funds that we have. But we've been doing very well to secure the funds where we can get them, which is great news. The community hub, should you be interested, we've worked hard with council as well on that. We are now in the very final stages, and we have a pre-site meeting coming up at the end of this month, so that can happen. We recently received approval from the ESFA, which is something we were waiting on, and all the legal documents are now finally being signed. So that's about a 7-year project that we managed to actually get on with this year. Not that we haven't in the past, but we're now ready to start hopefully in July, so that's exciting. And that really brings me on to the last thing that I just wanted to share with you, which is Kevin.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. I shared this with Kevin, and it's just something that we've been working on this year to look at the future growth of the college. As you know, there are plans for growth in the local area, and we're hoping that demographics will mean that there'll be more families coming in and therefore more young people coming into our school. We are projected to grow, according to the council, to a school of around 1,200 by 2023. Hopefully that will bring with it its revenue and will bring with it yet more impressive, talented young people. But as part of that, I need to plan and prepare for that eventuality. Our site is actually large enough to accommodate that. It used to be a school of 8th form entry, but one thing that we are lacking is a dining hall facility that actually will allow us to get 1,057 pupils through in 55 minutes, which we do now very, very well. Apparently they eat quite a lot, because ours, amongst the trust, is the highest profit share, and yet we charge exactly the same amount. So they do very well, our catering providers, but we don't have enough space. The other thing I'm really would like to do, and I think that you hopefully would agree that the culture is changing, and one of the most important things that we can do is safeguard our young people and protect our young people. We are a very open site. It's part of what the community, it's part of the community ethos of the school. But at the same time, I do need to safeguard the young people, and I am interested in trying to create a safer environment, which means a traffic-free site, ideally, which has secure perimeter line, ideally, and also enables us to grow. So, with that context, what I've been looking at with colleagues and developing a plan, the feasibility study has gone to the council. It's just an idea. This isn't going to happen for quite a long time. This is our current site. And for those of you not familiar with it, this is our dining hall area, which is very small, which is in the middle of the school. You'll be familiar here is the community sports centre, and the entrance is at the back. So those of you who go and use our gym regularly, so I'm sure many of you do, well, you need to drive in here along the playground to access the sports centre, which is not ideal. We also have buses that come onto the school site here at the end of the school day and at the beginning of the day. There's also another roadway through the centre of the college here, which we try to discourage parents and visitors using, but it is open access, and some people choose to use that area. Whilst this is happening, we've still got lots of pupils travelling all over, moving in and out of the buildings. If you're not familiar with our school, we have different departments have different buildings. So my life is about bells. Every hour, the bell goes and they all come out of buildings and head off into another building. So what we're looking at is solving a few problems in one, really. Looks very grey, doesn't it? So this is the current AstroTurf, and the tennis court is here. What we would like to try and achieve is a new dining hall, which would be here, which would also be the new reception for the school, and all visitors would report to this place here. What we would also do at the same time is reverse the entrance of the community sports centre, putting the entrance, a brand new entrance hopefully, with opportunity for a community cafe. People can sit and chat whilst they're getting over their exercises, would be here, which would then create a secure line following this red dot all the way along, around here, all the way out to the front and across here. So during school time there would be no need for any vehicular access to the site other than emergency access, which would still be able to get into the main body of the school through these. In order to achieve that, we would have a secure fence line here and a barrier operation here. For sports centres, the plan would be to have a fob entry. It would be open when the school is not in use, but other times it would be fob entry when it's school time. we want to create a bus bay separating bus traffic from pupils and cars and visitors, and create car parking space here on the existing playground and community sports centre car parking here. Having a slightly closer version of that, you can see it again now with the sports centre is at the back, but access would be in and out only. Oops. In this area here, this is slightly wider than it actually looks. This would be the main entrance, and then if you're accessing the sports centre, you could just drive straight up here, park, turn, and come back down again. This would be a two-way with traffic light entrance. We'll close off the main entrance here for all cars, but pupils would come through there. So again, a clear line between traffic and pupils. We create a nice space here for pupils. Currently this is out of bounds, but this becomes more of a social space. And then over here, which is currently the sports centre car park, we create the inner playground with hopefully basketball and some football provision there. So young people can still play when the field is out of use. They'd still be able to access the field in a school day, of course. And this would be our new tennis court here. If there was money, they'd be new AstroTurf here. Wish it goes on. And then...
Did you read the explanation of what I do?
So I think this answers all the... I think this addresses... I think this is a good solution to some of the issues that we have. Obviously there's a bit of work we need to do with our neighbourhood and neighbours here in terms of how we would make sure that any further noise would be controlled, but effectively it's exactly the same traffic that's coming on site now, so there's no significant change there. We do some work at improving this area so it's better access and better sighting as well, which I think would be important. The community, this is where the current library is, and the library would be over here where the Marvin Centre is. So just in terms of plans, the red area would be the area of change here. So bus bay, car park, new building, dining hall, kitchen, all lovely. Recycling here, lorry bay, so there's no more delivery problems. New entrance to the sports centre and a clear marked line across here. And then just to show you one last way, this would be new tarmac area here. We redo the playground here, and the bus bay will extend into the field slightly, but I don't know if you know our school field, it's huge. Done all the calculations and it wouldn't eat into any of the sporting facilities or anything like that. So that's something that we have submitted as a feasibility plan to the council. I'm hoping that they will agree with us, and we work with them to see that that addresses security growth, gives us the accommodation that we need, and would also just be a better flow to the school, a better alignment, and would mean that for the next 10, 15, 20 years, the school would be fit for purpose and reduce the risk of accidents to our young people, which has to be the priority. I'll take any questions on my report or on this.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Go on.
I'll say something.
Yes.
Yes. As a user of the sports centre and tennis player on the tennis courts, so I think the plans look really good, because I've often thought driving through that it's not a very easy drive through, and you're constantly looking each side, so anything that kind of delineates and restricts movement in and out will be good, and probably with a change of access to the sports centre may well encourage usage there as well. So I think all that's good. I really liked all that. I was going to ask you as well about the growth in numbers, because as I expect you know, we've had lots of discussions here about whether local schools can cope with all the extra families we're going to have, for example, from the new homes on Bakenham Road, from the infilling that goes on in the village.
Was to find, in a force that was already incredibly efficient to so many others across the country, another £10 million worth of savings in the forward plan, in the medium-term financial strategy. And over the last 3 years, working with the former Chief Constable, and now who has retired, and now the new one, which I'll talk about in a little while, We have managed, you'll be pleased to know, to balance our budget going forwards. One of only 2 police forces across the whole of the East plus Kent, and I'll talk about the 7 Force collaboration that has a balanced budget going forward for its medium term. So that's good news. It's good news in the terms that we can go forward with some confidence with building what we need to do. However, there have been over the last year, since I last spoke to you and come to one of your parish meetings, some significant additions that we weren't expecting. And I'll say this, as a former local government leader, one of the things I always used to say, just when you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, it's a bloody train coming the other way. And policing is no different. And one of the biggest challenges we've had is the actuary who've re-evaluated pensions for policing and basically said there is a hole with it. You're not putting enough in. For Cambridgeshire, that's the best part of 3 million a year, which is a big chunk. So if that wasn't enough, we then had an issue with a claim against Constabulary, which we are defending in terms of our motor insurance, our vehicle insurance. You can understand in policing our premium is quite high. And not only quite high, eye-wateringly high at £3 million a year, because you understand it's very high risk. But because of this additionality, they put the premium up another £500,000 in 1 year. So there are some additional pressures there. And that obviously has to be paid for. Now we are looking at alternatives. There's always a risk that you say actually we'll self-insure, but then you get that one big claim that's going to suck your reserves dry, and then we are in an issue. And we only have one insurer that will now touch policing the length and breadth of the country. And so it does become a real issue for us in terms of that. And then if we thought that wasn't enough, the National Forensics contract, and this is the contract that basically deals with the forensic samples, the DNA stuff, it goes off and it comes back for the matches that these good people need to quite often bring people to justice, collapsed. I have to say National Police Chiefs Council, which is the collective of the 43 National Police Chief Constables, did a great job in keeping that going in the meantime. The difference now is that it's going to cost us another £760,000 per year. So you can see where the budget and the stretch on the budget is going. That at a time also when we're seeing some of the highest demands that the police has ever seen. So not only have we got financial stretch, but we have got stretch in terms of demand. And I quite often talk about demand, Chairman, in terms of the changing face of criminality, the things that policing are now dealing with that they weren't dealing with even 10 years ago. Believe you me that the issues around Jimmy Savile that serviced not so long ago have brought historical cases exponentially out of the woodwork, and quite rightfully those accusations and investigations and bringing people to justice where there is evidence is ongoing and continues to put a lot of pressure on, especially on investigations within Cambridgeshire, as everywhere else. Modern day slavery, everyone thought that slavery was abolished in the 1800s. It is still alive and well today. Modern day slavery, where we weren't even talking about 10 years ago, policing is now really doing a great job in terms of both highlighting the issues, working with strategic partners like County Council to really hammer home to people, because quite often the victims don't realise they are victims. So it's a really difficult crime to basically look into and find the perpetrators. But clearly there is a big push in terms of modern day slavery. And believe you me, it's not just people who are bringing people over here to pick leeks or onions or any other crop in the fence. It is also the exploitation of people in terms of getting them in to be your cleaner. It might be sex workers as well. So it is evidence that those sort of things do go on, and they go on literally in every community. And it's right that the police shift some of its operational demand into some of those areas. I quite often hear people talk about the local village Bobby and Old Bill when he used to be about. And Old Bill, you know, and no disrespect, and I would never show disrespect to the police and those that serve within it. But there was a time, and it wasn't so long ago, that people who were being abused domestically in those situations were not getting any support or help from the police. And perpetrators were going unpunished for what they were doing. Now I'm pleased to say it is one of the police key priorities. And this sergeant will tell you the number of domestic incidents they now attend, or whether it is the traditional, as you would expect, in terms of the man attacking a woman or coercing, that coercive violence as well. It's quite often the other way around these days, and it's quite often sibling on parent as well. The police are often called to. In terms of can't deal with the children, so they call the police to come out and sort them out. So there is this shift, an operational shift in demand. And the other big one, where we're seeing more and more growth in demand, is around mental health, and it's around vulnerability. We've got an ageing population that we quite often talk about, and we're seeing huge increases in year in terms of the amount of people who go missing, who are vulnerable, who may have dementia, may have Alzheimer's, calls for concern, especially for the elderly, because families have split up, they might not even live in this country, can't get an older mum on their mobile phone, and these officers are called regularly to deal with those sort of issues. So vulnerability and risk to life is always, and I say this at parish council meetings, always going to trump parking issues for the police. It is as simple as that. So with a growing population as well, you talked about growth. One of the biggest challenges I have as the Police and Crime Commissioner is the fact that we are one of the fastest growing, and continue to be, counties in the UK. We have a mayor that wants to try and speed that growth up and try and get some infrastructure behind that, which I support fundamentally, because that's one thing that we are critically lacking in our county. Believe you me, I go out regularly with officers, and they're sat in the traffic with everyone else. Unless they're on a 999, they can use their blues and twos just the same. So it does cause us some great issues. And with a population of 845,000 at the moment across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we will see over the next 10 years that grow to over 1 million if the growth profile that we have at the moment continues to do what it's doing now. Now, the trick for me is that, yes, we're doing some good stuff, and I'll go on about policing numbers in a moment. But for me, that is one of my biggest issues. You'll hear of austerity, you'll hear about government cuts, you'll hear about all of the things that, whatever, government, whatever colour they may be at the time, has done to this county, not only now, but over the last 20 years. It is abhorrent, actually, depending, without any passing political affiliation at all, that this county is one of the lowest funded in the country, yet has one of the highest growth rates, and it creates some of the biggest wealth for the Treasury. So it's absolutely right that whatever government is in charge of this country going forwards, and it's something that I hammer home to our policing minister regularly, that some of these rural counties that cost more to police than cities, frankly, because of the sparsity, because of the size of our county, 1,306 square miles, that having the right funding formula that matches that growth going forwards will be essential for us to be able to support growth, support demand, safeguard the vulnerable, protect people from harm and death, and doing all of the things that police should be doing, and also doing those things that the community wants them to do as well. So, that's the bad news.
Is this good news?
And I'm not going to say no, more bad news, but so there is good news. There is light, actually, at the end of the tunnel. And One of the things we do very well in the East is the PCCs collectively hunt as a pack in central government. They don't quite know how to deal with it. And we work very well. And not only did we get what we were expecting, which was a 24% cut in our government grant. Now, if I tell you that our government grant is about 60% for policing in Cambridgeshire, 40% comes from the local taxation element in your council bill. Actually, that's 60%. And it can't do that while we've got that in growth. So what's happened is that the 24% became 5%, it then became flat. And over the last year, you will have seen me, and hopefully you consulted with me on increasing the council tax by 50 pence per week for average pound D. That's put £10 million on my bottom line, which takes us to 149 million revenue budget next year for our force. And with the small tax increase that we did the year before that as well, collectively, has not only dealt with all of the cost pressures that we had coming, and hopefully there won't be any more. The government has given us an assurance, or the ministers have, that the pension will be absorbed into the new formula grants when we get that next year, so we should wait and see on that one. At the moment we're programming it in as part of our savings. If that's the case, then that does put more money for more policing. So we talk about cuts, we talk about policing numbers. By the end of the next financial year, we will have record numbers of police in Cambridgeshire. The most it was ever goes right back to 2004. There's 1,435. By the end of the next financial year, we'll have 1,496 Crown officers in Cambridgeshire. So we're heading in the right direction. It does come with a bit of a health warning, and some of that is around the local policing review that I've talked to you about last year as well, which is now implemented, which basically took it from 6 sectors down to 2. So instead of having a district-wide, so South Cambs Police, Huntingdonshire Police, Cambridgeshire Police, Fenland, East Cambs and Peterborough, we now have North and South. That reduced some of the supervisory roles, it put more feet on the ground, and it created 105 new officers dealing with the demand that the Chief Constable was struggling to deal with. So, in terms of policing numbers, that's good. PCSOs, bearing in mind our new Chief Constable, I'll talk about in a second, has come from Norfolk, where they have dispensed of every single PCSO. In Cambridgeshire, that will not be the case. We will still have 80 dedicated community officers, and where some other forces do not have community policing at all now, in Cambridgeshire we still have 10% of our officers dedicated to local community-based policing, which is good. But clearly we would like more. So not only is my role around obviously the budget, and around making sure that our victims witness services that I commission, so hence the commissioner bit, the services that I commission around that. We're also doing some great work around the offenders programme as well, because actually reducing harm and the harm of the same people going round and round a criminal justice system is absolutely key. We've been doing some great work over the last 2 years in terms of introducing a new offender hub, where conditional cautions are now used sometimes for offenders, which keeps them out of the criminal justice system, but it deals with the core issues of why someone is offending. And quite often these days it is, and it continues to be, alcohol and drugs. The 2 biggest ones are that. Mental health to an extent, that fuel a lot of the inquisitive crime and criminality. So working again in partnership with the County Council, we have been looking at new ways in which we can work over the last year, so that we can industrialise what we do and not just deal with a small cohort, but actually increase the numbers that are going through some of those programmes. Because only if you can cut off the core issue can you solve some of the core issues that we have. Police can keep chasing people around. It's a bit like when people say, well, I've got drug dealing in my area. Do you know, it's funny that you've got drug dealing in your area, because actually people are buying drugs. And that's the core issue. If you didn't have people buying drugs and youngsters trying drugs, you wouldn't have a dealer in your area. So over the next year, I have the assurance of the new Chief Constable, who comes with us from Norfolk, Alec Wood, I have to say, was an excellent Chief Constable for this county. He retired, as they do, you know, at the ripe old age of 52. Yeah, it can't be bad, can it? Yeah, it's very pleasing. It's still a more, yeah, well, they've all been there, so my job is to, one of my big roles is to hire and fire Chief Constables. Now, I see my role as very much working with these officers and supporting them in any way I can rather than poking fingers, because they have a tough enough job as it is. So I support them any way I can. But clearly listening to your views and expressing concerns when they rise with the Chief Constable as well. And Nick Dean, who is our new Chief, comes with a great pedigree. He's 26 years experience of policing, mainly it is Norfolk he comes from, so he's literally just over the border. And I was really impressed with the partnership working that he promoted. Because the one thing that we can't do, any of us agencies, whether that's local communities, parish councils, districts, county, the clinical commissioning group, the NHS, the third sector, is standalone anymore. We need to be working smarter, we need to be working better together, and that's something I've really been promoting for the last 2 years as well. And Nick Dean absolutely gets that. Now the assurance that he's given me over the next year is the 50 new officers that we will take on this year on top of our establishment. I've had that argument with many people, how many people are leaving. You know, you've got an establishment figure, we train up to that. You know, people do leave, but actually this is another 50 to take us up to the 1496, which is the record high. Those 50, now we're in a position where response is good, prompts are good. 101, I have to say, first pick up now 30 seconds. I know I do get the odd person that says, you know, 101's no good. The investment in the new website over the last year, so you can now report some of the low-level issues. If you think there's drug dealing in your area, you can do things anonymously, you can do that online. So there's been a lot that we've done in the last year, including bringing our 101 and our 999 call handlers together at Force HQ. It used to be 101s at Peterborough, 999s at Huntingdon, where the main central hub is. Now everyone's together and there's a demand hub, so everything comes in front of the sausage machine and it's dealt with collectively, which has given it much more resilience going forwards. So it's not all bad news, Chairman. I don't want to go on all night. There'll be some people that want to ask questions this evening of me. But what I would say is that in South Cambridgeshire especially, when we talk about crime and when we talk about crime numbers, the average per 1,000 people is 81. The average crimes per 1,000 people in Cambridgeshire is around 38. In South Cambridgeshire, should I say, is 38 crimes per 1,000 people. So actually, it is half the national average about there. So in terms of how safe you are here, in terms of criminality, it is very low, which is good news. My job is to make sure we not only keep it low, but we tackle some of those core issues, especially some of the London-based county lines drug dealers that are now, you've heard of county lines, where it's like, I've described it as the Amazon of drugs. You basically ring a number, they tell you where to pick them up, or they will deliver them to your door. It has got that sophisticated and encrypted numbers, all sorts. So they are really using technology. And actually tackling those core issues, tackling prevention, it is going to be key. Because it's like anything, you can respond to everything, but actually getting into a preventative, getting policing back into a preventative agenda is going to be where the future has to be. Putting people in prison is actually the expensive bit. It's a bit like the NHS. When somebody's in A&E or in hospital, that's the expensive bit. You can stop them getting in there in the first place, then it's money that you can spend elsewhere. and it's exactly the same with policing. So I will continue to work on those programmes, Chairman, and I will continue, hopefully, to keep this county as safe as it is now and going forwards into the future as well. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll open to the floor. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned the Seven Forces programme. Is that a replacement and or expansion of the work that you're doing with BES
Yeah. So at the moment we collaborate with Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, which is some of our back office functions, but more also our specialist capabilities. So armed policing, dog units, the expensive end of the policing, because I have to say it's very expensive, the armed response stuff. And that's given us a great amount of resilience. I get that assurance all the time. I also get the assurance all the time through the figures that Cambridgeshire does get its fair share of that service as well, which is always key when you collaborate anything. Seven Force I've been leading in terms of procurement. And between the Seven Forces, we procure in goods and services about £190 million a year. When we looked at the possibility, we talk about councils doing bits and pieces together and, CCTV and a little bit here, a little bit there. This is a procurement across every constabulary across the east plus Kent. And Kent came in because it does quite a bit with Essex. So that's 190 million and 7,000 suppliers across that area as well. So rationalising some of the suppliers while still having that social element of using local, so we don't, upset Bob the plumber who used to do all the policing stuff, so you've still got that side of it. But actually some of the high-end stuff like energy, for example, we've looked at the top 6, and over the next 4 years that's going to save £2.5 million just for Cambridgeshire, which is money we can reinvest on policing. So I'm really proud to say that I've led that programme across Seven Forces, and I also lead now the procurement ICT through the National Commercial Board on behalf of the Home Office as well, because they've seen now the Seven Force model as something they want to replicate across the rest of the country. So collaboration is one of those keys where, for me, it's around what do you collaborate, where you don't lose your sovereignty and you don't lose your local control, so people still feel they have a local community police force that they can identify with, which I think is really important.
Somebody else have a Roger?
What's the average age police officer retiring?
It's a good point. It's a good point. The average is around, I'd say 52 to 55.
Why?
And I say this is why I say closure is the pensions are changing, which will push the average age of police officers up to 60. Now, the pension is set up so at the moment where somebody can retire on their full pension after 30 years service. So if someone went in at 18, then, or 20, then they're going to be retiring at 50. So if someone comes in even at 22, they're going to be 52. So 30 years service is where you get your full pension. It's a bit like the army, to be fair, and the military. So the government have made changes to the pensions going forward. So those that are in force now will be okay. But going forward, it's pushing it up to 60.
Yeah, because my point is, normal people have to work till 66, 67,
Things are normal,
60.
to be fair.
Why are they not normal?
It's a high pressure, dangerous environment.
Other people have high pressure as well, but they still have to work.
Yeah.
If there's any
Why
responsibility.
should they be treated special? They've got hard life on the front line. Right, when they get up in the 50s, what's wrong with that? So they don't. Yeah, some people.
Yeah. To be fair, there are many police officers that come back and do some of those roles. They're the head of the special constabulary. I've got an ex Bobby that works in my office as well. So you know, most of them don't retire at that point. They just can because the pension allows them to do. Now, that's above my pay grade, why that is the case. But ultimately, wrong or rightly, ultimately that is a government decision, and the pensions are moving in a direction where officers will be expected to stay on longer. The trick from any chief constable's point of view is when somebody is not fit enough, because they have to do bleep tests, not fit enough to serve on the front line, or if there aren't enough jobs on the back office or on the call centre or whatever to put them into. So I can see the point, but I can also see the fact that you would expect somebody who is fit enough to chase someone and is agile enough to tackle someone in a nighttime economy situation, or somebody that comes at them with a knife and not sort of running around with a few extra peanuts.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they're getting retired. I know somebody who's coming out to retire at 52 and it's a fiddle. He said he no need to retire, but they're going to pay me enough. I'm going to say, which is wrong. There's some money.
But historically, that's been the case, and I don't, you know, at the end of the day, I cannot interfere in that. That's the way the pension's set up nationally. Both police pay and police pensions are set nationally.
I'm not well.
We'll go all night with this, Roger. You were told to behave. So now you behave. Okay? I have other people who've got a lot of stuff on. Alright, so,
John, if there's any consolation, I'll probably retire at 70 if that's
you are.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of things. Thank you, Jason, for coming to talk to us, because I think it is really, really good for us all to know what the context is at the moment, what the main priorities are, and the sort of financial pressures and whatever. As you were speaking, I was trying to think about how can we as a parish council help, and I don't know whether, for instance, we have a link to your website through our website or something like that.
we certainly do that.
Yeah, maybe some guidance on what we report, because of course, as you know, you alluded to it about parking. I mean, one of the big issues that keeps coming to us is about parking and speeding and whatever. So, if people know what they can report and how they can do it, I think that would probably help.
I mean, Willingham, one thing with Willingham is that you might have seen with Liverpool, we did quite a lot of work in Willingham in South Cambs this year. And one thing we did do with them was work with their Facebook administrators and their Twitter feeds. Some villages have 10, 20 even Facebook sites, which we can't physically monitor constantly. But the administrators were putting links directly onto our website on Facebook and social media, so that people were reporting before they started chatting about it on Facebook, because quite often people think that they've reported something by typing on Facebook, so they think, oh, I've been on Facebook, the police know about it, but actually, if that Facebook account is one of 20 of that village, then it might not necessarily reach us. So perhaps working with if you've got a Facebook sites and Twitter feeds, and encouraging people to report through those, because especially depending what age generation you're looking at, different people use different social media. So you've got predominantly the older sort of generation, and then you come down to Facebook and then Twitter, and there's lots more coming through. So just knowing what your local media is saying and encouraging people to report first before chatting about it. Yeah. So it also helps us from an investigative point of view. If it's out in the public domain already, sometimes sometimes all the information there, you have to get investigations as well.
And it's one of those things. One of the biggest frustrations I had when I first came in is that there's a whole host of things that go on that the police are doing day in, day out, and people say, I never see a police officer not doing anything, and I know what they're doing. And of course I can't impart information about what covert team is doing and the operation they're doing around all sorts of different issues. And one of the things I think that the former Chief Constable and the new Chief Constable was very keen on is giving the power to the individual officers on the front line to use social media and actually celebrate the successes.
Yes.
there's always that push and pull between they don't want to highlight who it is, where it is, because of it, if it's a live case. But Peterborough started it, so it's worth looking at Peterborough Police Twitter. So I know South this area now do it, don't you?
Yeah.
In terms of that. So it's been pushed since Christmas, but it will gather momentum as more officers do it. And it's that thing where, you know, somebody doors knocked in and they see some drugs, actually just taking a picture of the drugs or taking a picture of the car that they've seized without the number plate, you know, and little hashtags they've got on it, don't they? Hashtag not in our county and stuff like that. And it actually does start to paint a picture of what the police are actually doing day in, day out. And obviously you're not going to get, you know, the stuff they're dealing with, children's safeguarding and stuff like that, and adult safeguarding as well, and those sort of investigations. But actually dealing with just the day-to-day stuff, then, you know, it's promoting the fact that they're there. Because quite often people say, well, I didn't see a police officer or anything. Actually, I was out with them the other day and they walked past your house. But you didn't see them because you didn't look out the window at the time. But actually, they're giving that assurance, especially PCSOs, to say, I'm in the local village today, I'm doing a surgery, or I've been dealing with some low-level ASP with kids in the park or whatever. It gives people the assurance actually they are being heard and the issues that matter to them are being dealt with. So it's worth linking in to those social media pages as well as a parish, and indeed as a community.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. We can probably link up more with that. So I'll put that on the list. Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone? I have a couple of questions. One is regarding the extra 50 police that you are obtaining. Is how will they be? Do you have any idea how they will be deployed? The other issue is which we quite hear commonly here is the situation with rural crime, burglaries, hair coursing. And I know you've done a big program on hair coursing. So, you know, any feedback on that? And regarding the 38 crimes per 1,000, what percentage of that is actually domestic abuse? Because and you'll be fully aware that as a county I'm involved with that and the prevention programme. So those aspects would be interesting to know, because that will give the public a better idea of time spent on what we call violent crime to domestic abuse crime.
But going backwards on that, domestic abuse accounts between, and it does vary, because you can go to multiple instances that are the same issue, so it can skew the figures. But you are talking around 14-15% of policing time spent on that, so 15% of that 38 crimes would be sort of that total, although it's not an exact science because it can be a specific issue with a specific individual or a specific family, which, as we know from the county council perspective, quite often from children's safeguarding, adult safeguarding, it's quite often the same people, you know, the troubled families programme, etc., that the police are dealing with. In terms of where the officers are deployed, that is purely the job of the Chief Constable, and I will keep a close eye on that. People will say, you know, how many am I going to get from my village? Well, actually, if you've got 1,196, if you need 1,496, Chief Constable will get them in on their day off and they'll be there. It's as simple as that. It is your county-wide force. You've got a community team here. The Chief Constable is really keen to look at the numbers of community teams and bolster that over the next year. So hopefully with the new officers who are coming through, which, let's be honest, we haven't seen the productivity from them because quite a few of those are still going through their probationary period, so they're budding up with another officer as they go through their training. Once the productivity is there, once the new cars are in, they can go out independently on patrol, which are on their way, you should see a marked improvement in hopefully the visibility that actually people want and people hanker for against the demand, which is quite often these days behind closed doors. What was the other one?
Rural crime.
Rural crime. Hair coursing down 24% year on year. There's been a massive surge in hair coursing where we have been the victims within our county because A, we've got loads of brown hair, and B, we've got loads of flat places for the hair coursers to come into. We have had hair coursers as far as Liverpool, coming to course in Cambridgeshire because it is a good area to course in, and a lot of the thank you. A lot of the it's absolutely true, by the way. The train that's the train going the other way. Damn, not another one. The chief constable reports it as something else. But so in terms of the criminality, it's gone up a lot over the last 4 to 5 years, a hell of a lot. And all of the traditional cups that were being held, which pushing the numbers up, were being held in Cambridgeshire. James Sutherland, who used to be the area commander here as chief inspector, is now essentially a superintendent, so he's going up the ranks, and he leads on rural crime for the East now, so he's a Cambridgeshire cop, works in Demand Hub and runs that, but he is very on top of sort of rural criminality. Now we've got an RCAT team, rural crime team, that is small in number but hugely effective, and they've been going after hair courses this year. And James has gathered a huge amount of evidence with farmers. And I have been going to Parliament and challenging a change in the law because they are still using the Gaming Act to bring people to justice. So £10,000 might exchange on a single course. They're being fined £200 maximum in a magistrate's court. So they're basically just laughing out the court. So this year, I have to say, Cambridgeshire Constabulary has been innovative. So while we push for that change, and I've led the charge with ministers, met with MPs in Parliament, and the Prime Minister's senior policy advisor to get a change in the legislation, which good luck at the moment on that. But they say there are things they can do, so we'll see where we go. But the innovation comes from using civil courts. So 5 of the most prolific hair coursers who were doing the cups and the cup runs have had civil injunctions, and as a consequence they now go to Lincolnshire or Norfolk to do the cups. We haven't had a single cup in Cambridgeshire this year. We were the first force to do that, hugely innovative. It's clearly working. And this year we are at the moment gathering the evidence through James Sullivan's excellence again to put in a county-wide injunction for hair coursing in Cambridgeshire, which we believe will make a significant difference to not only the criminality around hair coursing, but that wider intimidation, the crime that surrounds hair coursing as well, that we know will hopefully reduce as well. So using innovation is key, and an absolute commitment that the Royal Crime Team, which I know is heralded by farmers, especially in South Cambridgeshire, where Essex, we're talking to Mr. Holloway, who's the chair of Cubstide Watch now, who has got a farm that borders on the Essex. He's got some fields in Essex. He always gets a response from Cambridgeshire. Essex, when he rings up, Essex Constabulary do not respond to hair coursing. So we are tackling that criminality. The Royal Crime Team also look at trailer theft this time of year, theft from farms, especially batteries, diesel, lead from church roofs, so that sort of thing. So they're tackling that this time of year, and the Chief Constable was very keen that they're given a new drone capability as well. So they've been across to Norfolk to have a look at that. That's really good for evidence gathering. It's also really good when a cop turns up at a church, because actually if a perpetrator's on a roof and they see the police coming, they lie down on the roof, and the police can shout all day and they're not going to stand up. Put a drone up, and you can see somebody's lying down the roof. So using that capability effectively while we share a helicopter, and the helicopter does come on occasion, but very expensive bit of kit, but actually for the cost of a drone and training people is well worth the money. So the Rural Crime Team will continue to tackle those core issues, but be assured that actually the Rural Crime Team tackling that doesn't mean that rural crime that happens in rural communities, such as burglaries, are being tackled as well. We've seen a 24% decrease in burglary in Cambridgeshire in the last year. which is a huge success. It comes on the back of a major operation through our Eastern Region Serious Special Operations Unit, and our local serious crime and our local officers giving the intelligence, and a lot of DNA, where some individuals who were prolific in burglary across 4 counties were charged with 200 separate offences. And that's the ones they were charged with. So you can imagine, you know, DNA evidence is going to be at every single burglary. So we know that as a consequence of them now being at Her Majesty's pleasure, that there's been a significant decrease. So you can only assume that they were responsible for a whole lot of them.
Can I just ask, with the hair course years ago, because I was a member of Countryside Watch, they could ban them for driving, even if they were just a passenger in a vehicle that had been used for hair coursing, and they were getting 6 months driving bans. Is that not done anymore?
They're seizing vehicles, aren't they? But I'll give you, you should do the operational stuff.
Basically, as Mr. Graham White's already alluded to, the current legislation, criminal legislation, is quite difficult to get through to a court. So what we tend to often do is actually use other legislation, vehicle powers, road tax powers, no MOT, no driving licence, disqualified drivers, that sort of thing, to actually disrupt the offenders. And on the back of that is where we actually try to build a case in terms of our civil cases that we've been putting together. So we use the information, we collect the information about who's there, when, why, who's in the group, and then disperse them so that we can issue Section 34 dispersal orders to prevent them from hair coursing. So it might be that they're actually travelling with the dogs but haven't actually started the actual competition yet. So by issuing them a dispersal order, we can make sure that prevent that from happening. If they breach that dispersal order, then we can take further action. Those dispersal orders then feed into the injunctions. So when we talk about the injunctions, actually we look at the impact of the injunction. As Mr. Edwards alluded to, the financial implications of a court appearance for some of the criminal legislation is really quite minimal. And when you're looking at some of the amounts of money that change hands on a simple hair coursing event, you talk thousands of pounds. A minimal conflict through the criminal courts isn't going to have an impact. Whereas of the 4 of the hair courses that were pursued in terms of the civil injunctions, one of them had to pay £12,500 in fees and fines. So that it hits their pocket, and that's a big deterrent not to do it in Cambridgeshire if we can continue doing that.
Because I think the inspector that led the rural crime team at the time, he wrote to every single magistrate.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Explaining what he was trying to do, so to try and get a better outcome than they did go to court.
Probably the 1834 Gaming Act, isn't it, that they use? So of course that's more about poaching.
Yeah, this was, I don't know what we found some law, I was
the civil injunctions really are the way forward. However, they are very, very intensive in terms of getting them to court. Some of the information, the evidence that was taken to court was actually 3 years worth of data. So that's why we need to really encourage people to report things as much as possible. To some people, they will look at it and go, oh, okay, you're losing your hair. But actually, when you deal with instead of asking what is happening, we ask why it's happening. It's happening because there's huge sums of money exchanging hands that have probably never actually gone through any sort of, it's not legal money. And so we need to try and attack that in any way we can do best to encourage them to report.
Okay, thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for coming along this evening, giving up your time, and when you could be out there catching these criminals.
I don't personally. I've been known to help the old officer when I do have to go out regularly, but it's a great picture for me.
We do appreciate everything that you do, and we really appreciate the fact that you give up the time to come and the presentation. Thank you very much for that.
And I would say, Chairman, knowing from you as Chair and Parish Councillors, also other local representatives I'm sure here this evening, that my door's always open. That if you want to come and discuss any issues to do with policing, I have regular surgeries. If I haven't got a surgery advertised, just contact the office and I always make space available. It may be that you come over to Force HQ. Chair, as the Chairman, I always make the offer when I come to these events, which always, gathers a rally for the new chair for next year, that if you wish to come over to Force HQ, spend some time with us and I'll show you around our new command hub again. Unless you have someone else on the Parish Council, of course, that would love to come and do that. Which, of course, we're more than happy to help facilitate.
Excellent. With regard to the surgery, we could organise, I think it's a good idea to organise a surgery in Sawston so we can have a... Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, moving on, rapidly. Presentation from Genevieve McManus of Womsey Fair. Thank you, Genevieve.
Hi, I'm Genevieve. I'm a youth development worker for an organisation called Romsey Mill. I don't know if anyone knows about it. No, some people do. So it's basically a charity which started off in Cambridge, but we've now spread out across Cambridgeshire, so all the way to Peterborough, some of our work, and includes some of the work that we're doing here. So I'm technically something called a youth development worker, which means I develop youth. It's very exact. So I do the youth work in Sawston and some other areas as well. So I kind of thought we'd share a little bit about what we've been doing for the last year within Sawston. So I see personally about 200 young people a week in Sawston who are disadvantaged, at risk or vulnerable. And that's anything from about 11-year-olds to 21-year-olds. So it's quite a wide range of young people that we're seeing. There's also another youth worker, and we've just started having another youth worker. So we have a team of 3 at the moment, and some volunteers, which is awesome. A lot of our work is quite multifaceted, so we do a lot of work from alternative education. So over the last year we've run uniform services, so teaching young people a lot of teamwork and kind of talking a lot more about what it might take to work within the service sector, like police or fire service or something like that. So we did lots of orienteering and kind of that kind of idea, which was really good. Over the last year, we've also, so the last 4 months, we set up a boxing group, which is targeting on the older year 9, year 10 age group of boys, which are quite hard to reach, and so we found that boxing is a really good way of engaging them through sports. So that's been really successful so far, and we're doing that at Iceni Boxing Club. It's a good way of teaching them about teamwork and about managing your emotions and about discipline. It's been really, really successful with them so far. We have done about a year with 7 lunchtime club. So we run that weekly on a Thursday, and that's for some of the youngsters who are, I suppose, like more vulnerable, the ones which need more like social skills and interaction, making friends, helping them with anxiety. And we do this through group work and through fun games and that kind of thing. We do mentoring, which is really exciting. We work one-to-one for kids which need a little bit more of focused, kind of intensive work, which is fantastic for them if they need a little bit more one-to-one work. That's what we've been doing. We've also been running a football club for a bit as well, which has just come to an end. I've kind of just powered through it really quickly, catch up on time over. But is there any questions anyone has? I'm kind of just bombarded it. Yeah.
There was some talk at one stage of Monty Mill having an outreach proposed in Sawston. Am I right thinking of looking at the old Barclays Bank house?
Yeah, so we were for a while. We've decided that it makes more sense for us to move to Shelford. I'm not really sure about that part of it because that's the SSY that we work with. So we do outreach in terms of detached work. So twice a week I go out into the community and I work with young people who might be hanging out in parks or in the school. So we do that at lunchtime and we then do an after after school evening kind of session. That's really good for reaching the kids that might not be engaging in the groups that we're working with, or might not be at home. So sometimes when you're out late at night and there's kids at a park, I'm concerned really why are they out at the park, and it's quite a good way of engaging with them. And then through meeting them and having conversations over a period of time, we then target groups. So we've actually got a group, hopefully, which will be maybe starting, which will be at the pavilion down, what's the name of the park? Milner. Yeah, so we're going to be starting that hopefully for some of the young people we're finding that are hanging out there and doing a little bit disruptive behaviour. So hopefully I'll give them a positive space to be in, and we'll have hopefully like some activities and stuff planned for them there. So yeah, the idea is basically we see a need and then we respond to the need, rather than just creating something and then inviting people to it, which I think is really good about the work that we're doing. Is it's very grassroots and it's built up from what they need and what they want. But so we are, yeah, in that sense. But in terms of a building, at the moment, we don't have one in Sawston. Any other questions?
Yeah, Genevieve, yes. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I mean, people perhaps don't know Parish Council does support Romsey.
Yeah,
and one of the reasons is because it's incredibly useful for us when residents report to us there are some issues, with youngsters, whatever, usually fairly low level, but Romsey Mill, when they do their sweeps around our recreation grounds, they can talk to the groups and get them to come along to your kind of activities, and that helps them. And when we think back to what Mrs. Abenwright was just talking about, trouble families program, etc. As I understand it, the kids then they're in these situations often not through their own fault, it's their circumstances, poverty, it's alcohol, it's
masterminds and everything which schools were showing about really, like there is a high need in our community. Cambridge and the area is the most unequal city in the UK. So we have huge amounts of poverty, and I know that's been shared about it this evening about the austerity and stuff, but there's a huge thing, because I think I showed you, when I first started working for Romsey, I thought, my job's going to be really easy, it's in Cambridge, right? It's fine. But yeah, we have a lot of issues with county lines, with the young people, and that's obviously, sometimes it's down to self-esteem, sometimes resilience, sometimes wanting to be part of the community, which I think is really important that as a community and it's also that we're really engaging with young people. I feel like at the moment there's a lot of fear mongering, especially in the press and everything. And I think kids get into gang culture and everything because they need a sense of identity and to be involved with people and just cherish them and build up, and that's kind of why they end up kind of turning to more of a negative side if they find identity in that. So I think it's really good that we're doing stuff within our community, because that's hopefully building a positive environment for them to feel that they have an identity in. And feel like that we're doing, and also all the other youth organisations within Sawston, hopefully we're providing them stuff, positive identity and community and stuff. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If anyone would like anything in terms of more information, because I have just thrown at you, there's loads more information and details in the report here, so please feel free to take some. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
We did attend your presentation last year. That was a really eye-opening event.
Yes, it was good.
That was really good, especially the vaccine. She was really good.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on,
Thank you.
and thank you for the update.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, and moving on to the next item is Reg Cullum has kindly offered to explain about give us an update of the neighbourhood plan. So over to you, Reg.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't kindly.
Well, we only twisted one arm.
Thank you for inviting me. Right, Sawston is an amazing village. Now, some people are going to criticise me for saying that, but I don't want you to take my word for it. If you go down into the high street and feel the palpable community spirit that goes up and down that high street, it is something to be admired. Over many historical decades, Sawston has weathered many highs and lows as the village developed and adapted to changing circumstances. It's my view that the success of the village as a healthy environment is, I believe, perhaps through its parish council who have watched over, considered and perhaps reacted to various development projects that have come before individual members of both the past and present parish council. Today, we are being asked to continue that same watchfulness as South Cambridgeshire District Council seeks a meaningful partnership with the residents of the village through a published neighbourhood plan. So hopefully you have heard of the neighbourhood plan. If you haven't, we're going to bombard you with it. Through the interaction over the past year by Sawston folk and their parish council, a working group has met and engaged with lots of residents and their families at and through village events and drop-in centres. The strong response was that what people liked about living in Sawston and the further issues and concerns about environmental matters that the working group should continue to focus on within the neighbourhood plan, some of those important issues appear to have been safeguarding the feel of the high street by positive improvements to its retailing success, preservation of our open green spaces, dealing with the problematic infrastructure pressures and traffic enforcement matters. In a nutshell, preserving all that is environmentally and architecturally pleasing about this unique village. The neighbourhood plan sets out 7 guidelines on what it can and cannot do. However, it is a legislative plan that has to be taken into account by the District Council when setting the village's perception of sustainable growth against the central government's national planning policies and its own planning policies. You're looking, oh right, I thought you were going to say something. Just for a minute. Some of you will be aware that running alongside the neighbourhood plan is the draft Village Design Guide that has identified the characteristics of Sawston's housing and other buildings and how people feel about the vernacular environment in which they live. At this present time, the draft guide is in its public consultation period before it is considered by South Cambridgeshire District Council. I cannot stress the importance of us all engaging in the feedback session on Thursday, the 9th of May, between 3:30 and 8 o'clock. The final version of the statement will include such matters as relating to sustainability, habitats, equality, impact within and the surrounding village. In tonight's news, for those who read the Cambridge News, there is a little bit of a downturn because the article has indicated that we are in losing most probably 1 or 2 ancient buildings, and they've highlighted Sawston. Now, I don't quite know what this word means, but they talk about our conservation areas less than stellar. I have no idea what it means. May I ask? No? Okay.
If stellar is outstanding, then less than outstanding, I would suggest.
Well, I would have said we were outstanding. As an aside, my research has revealed that there are 47 Grade 2 listed buildings and monuments in this village, and that is something I think to be proud of. The Parish Council and its working group have worked hard to produce what will become a formal partnership between the district and parish councils. In a sense, a blueprint for safeguarding the hoped-for continuation of our positive village life. Sawston is at a moment in time of what is now becoming a significant change to the village as a whole, with the already commencement of new housing developments, the renewal or modification of infrastructure schemes, and the introduction of major research centres. That said, business interests, employment opportunities, and strong, proactive local retail facilities do still need to be assured and safeguarded. There will be pressures on the village from beyond Sawston's boundaries, which will require all of us to actively and robustly engage in promoting all that is best in the community of Sawston, whether as a once medieval township or as now an important village at the centre of South Cambridge. The working group and the parish council have set the standard high, so it is up to all of us to carry forward the task of ensuring a village environment that is the envy of other villages.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions to ask? No? Thank you very much.
I've stumbled into science.
You have, amazing. Thank you very much for doing that.
Sorry, just one slight comment about the conservation area. It was listed as being at risk, actually, I think, some years ago, about 2009, 2010.
Yes.
So it was on the National Heritage website as being at risk.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It was thrown at us from a great height
Yeah.
without any involvement of the local population.
Yeah.
I think it is being changed. It's being changed in a slightly illogical way.
But as part of the incentive between the village design guys.
It is, absolutely.
Yes.
Safeguard your buildings.
John.
Yeah, just a quick addition to that. And thank you to Reg for saying all that. You've been a really strong supporter of the neighbourhood plan. We have got a programme of meetings and we'll also be at a lot of village events, village fates over the summer with a stand. And we really want to hear your views about your neighbourhood. And so do come along. If you're able to help us, that would be great. But just drop in, come to a meeting now and again, see what's going, have you say. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Janet. Right, and moving on to another great project that's coming to the village is the update on Sawston Time Bank by Liz Talbot. Thank you, Liz.
Hi everybody, I'm a coordinator and I'm setting up a time bank in Sawston. Now some of you may have heard about it, but if not, time banking is a way for people to help each other in the community by doing things they actually like to do. So it could be to help someone by repairing something, baking, walking a dog, or it could even be ironing. We have members who like to do ironing. Members have access to a wider network of people through joining the time bank. So by joining the time bank, you can help people, but also people can help you. So it helps bring people together who wouldn't have met each other in the wider community. We've had a number of people who have already met people who they maybe knew the face, but didn't know who they were, and they're now actually able, to have friendships and various things like that. Time is the currency here. So if you help somebody for 1 hour, it gets banked into your account and you can get an hour's return to help somebody. But you do not have to be in credit. You can help anybody if there is a need for it. We actually launched on the 14th of January. We had a meet and greet session at the parish council offices. And I'm really delighted to say that now we have 30 personal members, 5 organisational members and 1 7-year-old. I've done presentations at both of the primary schools and they have signed up to be members as well. We have organisational members, so Brownies, Scouts, various other organisations can be involved. And with Jonathan being here today, the Sawston Parish College has actually signed up today to be a full member. So we're growing nicely and it's really nice to see the friendships that people are making. Now, members have helped each other in a lot of different ways. We've had people with digging. Someone's helped someone dig over a patch in their garden. Somebody's helped with Windows 10 help for a person. Somebody has actually helped someone. Our very first exchange was helping someone to make a bra. They wanted to make a bra from scratch, and I found someone who was able to help. So that's quite an unusual one. But with the time bank, it can be anything and anything. If you have an interest or a hobby or something you want to learn, the time bank has a really good network of people who have such wonderful skills. There could be someone who I could find who could help you. Someone's actually borrowed a ladder, and the lady actually went with the person and helped them while they cut the tree down. So there's so many different things. It's not just typical volunteering. Time banking is open up to whatever skills people within the time bank community have. I've had one member who's actually helped them to paint one of the fences in a local primary school. Primary school, our member offered for the help, and our member is actually going through the fence. Bless her. So we have a computer system that we use, and that's where people can see what people are offering, and anyone can have a look at that. You don't have to be a time bank member. If you'd like some information, at the back there's some details about the Sawston Time Bank. So you can see the range of things that people are already asking for help or offering for help. I meet every person and we go through a questionnaire to find out what their interests are, what their hobbies. Everyone is so different, which is great. Some people are just wanting to do one thing, and that's absolutely fine. The beauty with the time bank is you do what you can when you can. You're not committing yourself to doing anything that you don't want to do. It could be you could do something on a weekend or an evening if you work full time. The choice is yours. One person just wants to do litter picking. That's absolutely fine. You know, being a time bank is doing what you like to do, but also you can have access and you can turn to people for help when you need it, because we never know when we do need it. It also has been shown to help with loneliness, people who live on their own. We're holding social events, so every morning the offices between 10 and 12, we have a drop-in coffee morning. And these have been a real hit in Sawston. I already have between 8 and 15 people come along. They sit down, have a coffee, chat with each other. One member brings along a 15-number domino set, which I've never seen before, but members absolutely love it. And it's just a way for people to get to know each other, you know, on a more personal level. Exchanges are happening straight away. One of our members was going away, and he wanted someone to look after his 3 cats. 2 time bank members offered that offer and wanted to help him straight away, and that exchange has actually happened. So it's just making people aware that the time bank is here, and you know, we're open to everybody. You don't have to be time bank members to come along to our coffee morning. Anybody can come along. And because I meet with everybody, I look to see what interests they have. And last week we set up a crafting group on a Tuesday morning. It's a drop-in session from 10 to 12, and we had about 8 people come along. And the ladies, we have so many crafty people in Sawston, it's quite amazing. And they're actually making me a table banner, because I have a stall in the Sawston Plate. It's going to be the quirkiest one you've ever seen. It's flower curtains with quirky patterning on it, so they're working on it as we speak, and I can't wait to see it. So it's a case of, you know, being open to everybody, and so we've done the craft group, and then on a Tuesday morning, the alternate weeks, we're doing a games group. We had that today, we had a few people come along, but it was really nice because it wasn't too busy. They were able to get to know each other a little bit more on a personal level and find out a bit more of connectivity and things like that. So I've got tables booked for the Sawston Plate and another event, and I'm asking members to, we have such wonderful things that they can make. So people are making things for us or donating things, and what I'm looking to do at these events is to promote the time bank as a community event and, you know, making people aware of it, but also as a fundraiser, because in the summer holiday I'd like to do an event for children, and I've got a room in one of the schools booked so that we can hold it there. So, you know, it's giving something back so that people can come along with their children to an event that's going to be very minimal in terms of cost, but it'll be something that they can do for a few hours. So, but the friendships that people are making are just really lovely. People who would not have met in any walk of life. We've got people who are just retired, and it's a perfect time for them because maybe they worked outside of the village, don't know anybody, and it's just a really lovely way for them to meet people. So I'm really pleased to be the coordinator, helping this time bank grow, and I look forward to seeing it continue growing success. Anybody have any questions? I'm happy to answer them for you.
Just quickly, I was just thinking, you mentioned about dealing with loneliness,
yes.
And I was just wanted to make sure that you coordinated with the social navigator at the surgery.
Kelly and I are already connected, and she's referring people to them already. The Grant and Medical Practice is actually one of our organisational members, so we've already got that connectivity. And one thing that I'm looking at doing as a fundraiser is like a teddy bear pull, which I got the idea from Kelly because she's used it at a recent event. It's where you have a ribbon and they pay £1 and everyone gets a teddy bear. So I'm going to use that hopefully as part of the fundraising that I do at the debate. Yeah, and Kelly and I are working quite closely.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any more questions?
You mentioned schools and elderly people. Like appropriate child protection measures and the protection of elderly people, vulnerable people.
What we do is, if people are going to be befriending an older person on a regular basis, we would do a DBS check in that situation to make sure that the person who's going in to see the vulnerable person has been accredited. The safeguarding issues that we have is that I meet with everybody, and we ask for 2 independent references from people who know that person. Now, in terms of schools and things like that, we work with the school, depending upon what they want the volunteer to do, because the volunteer might need to go through their DBS checks or whatever they want to do. So we have to work in collaboration with each organisation because they have their own rules and regulations. But, you know, for someone to go and paint in the school, you know, there's not an issue there. But with some events and things like that, you know, we'll work with organisations and, you know, we work in collaboration. But yeah, at the end of the day, safeguarding is one of the roles that I have to be mindful of, as is risk assessments, which are so much fun. That's my first time recently. So, but befriending is the only time we typically would do a DBS check. Although someone is offering maths tuition, so it might be that if he sees that person one-on-one with the parent not around, that might be another situation where I need to consider the DBS check.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Liz. And once again, it is a great opportunity for social integration as well, and getting involved. And you'll be surprised that people don't realise what skills they actually had until they came onto the time day. Because suddenly all schools open up, don't they?
When I had a meeting with one lady, who's like, I don't know what skills I've got. By the time I came speaking to her, there were 11 people she was able to do that she hadn't realised that she could. It's like this online.
Right, okay, thank you very much for that. Right, the annual chairman's report, I'm assuming every member has read it and the public has read it. I'm not going to go through it. Is there any questions that anyone would like to ask on the chairman's report? I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. Moving on to the year-end financial information. Again, I'm assuming members of the public have seen this. Okay.
Just for everybody, all the reports and everything today, there's copies on the table, if you want to take them on the way out.
Of those who have seen the financial report, has anyone got any particular questions?
Just one little one. I suspect I'm being a bit stupid. The note under the difference between action and budget expenditure indicates that it's been transferred to reserves, which fine, makes sense. How, of course, that doesn't include the difference between your action and budget income. Has that also been transferred to reserve, or something else been done with it?
The income, yeah, it all goes into reserves.
So it's not 68 grand, it's 80 grand basically, is it?
That's inclusive, isn't it?
Which figure are you looking at?
Right, so you've got
Oh, here.
bottom line,
Yeah.
it's total expenses, is a difference of 68 grand. But that's just your expenses, it's not your income. So you've got a balance of 12 grand in your income as well.
I'll double check that. I've got your email address, I believe.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, no trouble. That's what we're here for. That's what you're here for. Right, anything else? No? Right, councillors' attendance record. Any comments? Shows again that we've been very busy. Extremely busy. Right, have you, right. Update from the County Councillor. I'm assuming you've seen the County Council report. There's only one bit I'd like to add to that. After much fighting and struggling and scratching and everything, the Combined Authority has at last agreed to fund, give them money for the A505 transport study. Yes!
It's a start.
It's a start. And there's £1 million that's going to that's kick-start off. That's likely to be a 2-year project, so obviously there's going to be a time that will be taken before we find out anything about that. I don't think there's really anything else that I wish to mention, because I was going to speak about Hawaii, but I'll leave that to if you're having to talk about that one. So that's it. Oh, the other thing as well is to keep very mindful of is the East-West Rail potential link of that coming along. There has been a lot of public consultation with that. There's basically, it boils down to 2 routes, whether it goes north through Camborne or south through Sandy, Bassingbourne and those sort of areas. and at the moment there's good arguments for going north. It's been well presented. I'll mention his name by a gentleman called Sebastian Kindersley, who's a county councillor, and he's given some really good argument on that. And there's obviously the southern vote as well, which is the mayor is tying up with. I think he's sort of like favouring one or the other. Any questions?
I think just adding to that, the Northern Route supported by this parish council is responsible.
That's fine, yes, absolutely. So that's really all I have to add. So it's over to the district councillors. 15 seconds.
You have, I think, hopefully collected, if you haven't got
There's some of those over on the table.
There's some on the table of our report that's been published on the Facebook page as well. So we'll let you read them at your leisure, especially useful if you suffer from insomnia. And if we could just say a couple of things that are relatively recent. So,
pick up on that one. So, good news from the District Council is that we're funding this new zero carbon communities grant scheme, which enables communities to put forward bids from between, I think it's 1 and 15,000, something like that, for projects within the community that will reduce their carbon use. And it can be a wide range of things. So that's just announced this week. And so if you know of anybody within the community who'd be interested in thinking about any sort of project that would help to improve environmental issues, reducing carbon, then Brian and I would be happy to talk to you about it and help support, bring any ideas forward. So that's a really good news story from this week.
yeah. Locally, we've got an issue with the Hutchings and Harding's drying shed, which you may have heard about. They've been looking at alternatives to demolitions for a long time, but I think there's an application coming before the planning committee very shortly that's going to consider the future of that. At the moment, it's basically being held in place by scaffolding, isn't self-supporting, and would cost an awful lot of money to produce something that wasn't very much use. So that's coming forward. Kevin mentioned Huawei. With their plan, there was the consultation exercise at the Village College last week, which was quite well attended. I think 360 people turned up to that. They've also got an online version of the consultation, so you weren't able to make it to their consultation. I think generally, and David and I were talking about this earlier, the response to Huawei is great for economic development, new developments on the site, so to convert the brownfield site. Obviously employment opportunities, but obviously also typically with the economic growth that's been referred to earlier in the area, it's going to put more pressure on the infrastructure, particularly on roads and transport, and on housing. So those things are continuing, and it's a very much a phenomenon associated with the high economic growth in the area. So one of the responses of the new housing to the east is that we will have new housing there in the village. So coming forward, that will be very badly needed new housing for the village.
I think the other thing to pick up with on that is, with new housing coming to the village means that there is, through the what's called the S106 payment, which is a payment the developers have to make towards community facilities. We've been pushing really hard to make sure that particularly the amount allocated for education in the village goes to our schools in Sawston, and we've put in a kind of clause within the S106 agreement, which means that the money that comes from the development on the east side of Sawston will be given as first priority to Whitney School, which desperately needs money spent on it, and it's one of the projects that I'm going to be working really hard on, is make sure that all the schools in Sawston are well supported, so through developments that happen.
Yeah. So,
and I'm going there on Friday on a small bit linked to the environment to help them open their bug hotel. So, which is their way of contributing a small way to environmental improvements in the village. So, small things.
so shall we take, if anybody's got any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question for Brian, but I need to give you a little background before I ask the question. I've been quite closely involved with the production of the village design statement over the last 9 months or so, and to a lesser extent the neighbourhood plan. I know that in our South Cambridgeshire Council's report, page 3, you say it was great to see that the Sawston Village Design Guide was approved by the District Council in April and is now out for consultation. An important element of the design guide was the design of the village's forthcoming eastern edge developments, complementing the council's printed statement when the development sites were first identified, that the developments would provide a new softer edge, these were the words that were used, to the village, specifically with a maximum height of 3 stories in keeping with the character of the village. Yet site H1B, the triangular field behind the pair of isolated semis, what some people know as the co-op houses, on the north side of Baben Road, has had its quota of homes increased from 80 to 158, in other words, effectively doubled, with 5 4-storey, although branded as 3.5 storey, they are 4-storey, blocks of flats, which will be clearly visible over the roofs of the 2-storey houses on the rest of the site, as Sawston is approached from the east. And actually, the further away you are from those blocks, the more visible they'll be, if you think about a little bit of simple geometry. The recent planning meeting, where this outrageous, in my opinion, example of overdevelopment was approved, was recorded. And I actually have a copy of that recording. Just before it was voted through, Councillor Peter Topping expressed serious concerns about the scale of increase in the development and asked Brian, as our local district councillor, if it was really all right, to which Brian replied, all right, to what sounds on the tape like surprised laughter, after which it was voted through. I rang Brian a couple of weeks ago to challenge him on this, and he initially told me he'd been joking. Joking? On a matter of this importance and at such a critical moment. And then at the recent Huawei presentation, he gave me a totally different explanation, saying that Sawston is now a town and that he would not object to 4 and possibly 5 or more storey developments in the future. And those are the exact words, Brian. So I wonder if Brian could explain his statements and his actual position to this meeting and how he reconciles this with the village design statement, which he also apparently endorses. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a situation with the developments that you're aware of, where there were 3 developments coming forward, H1A, B and C in the village, and clearly the developers have worked over the last 4 years plus on those 2 plans that are coming forward, and we had as a village and as a parish council and as individuals ample opportunity to make contributions in the consultations over that. It was, I remember one of the meetings in this location that we're in now, where I was making those suggestions. But the time for those suggestions was gone. As a planning committee, as your former district councillors will know, is the last chance for those matters to be considered. We haven't considered them before us. The specific issue over what I said about Peter Topping's comment was a plaintiff from Councillor Topping who said, I think more accurately, if only somebody could tell me it was all right, going to be all right. And I responded in what I thought was a witty way to say it'll be all right.
But a moment like that, it's not a laughing matter. This was the most serious matter that's affecting our village in the near future. It's not something to joke about, Brian.
So
it's not funny.
Mayor? So the joke was because Peter Topping was clearly in some distress about this. That's not to state that the matter was not something I took very seriously. I've given this a... Well, you're shaking your head.
That's a ridiculous statement.
What, that I don't take this seriously?
Yeah, I mean...
Absolutely not. No, so I absolutely refute any suggestion that I don't take the matter of the development
In which case,
seriously.
why did you tell me one story when I spoke to you on the phone, and an entirely different story when you called me at that meeting at Huawei the other day? Because the two things do not reconcile. What you're saying just doesn't add up, Brian.
So sorry, tell me again what things don't add up.
You told me on the phone that it had been a joke and that your joke was probably in poor taste.
Yes.
At the meeting,
stand by that.
you actually said that you now believe that Sawston was a town, not a village. Those were your very words. And you said that you thought it was perfectly reasonable to have 4-storey and possibly 5 or more storey development in the village. That is what you said to me at that meeting. So what do you want to see? Are we going for Ceausescu-like sort of development in the village in the future? Because what you said is absurd. This is a village. We've spoken to dozens of people. Can I just finish my point? We've spoken to dozens of people at numerous events, or not numerous events, but several events around the village in connection with this village design statement. I've been working hard on this over the last 9 months. And this was one of the things that came over clearly, that people wanted to retain the character of the village. They liked the fact that a lot of people weren't very keen on the eastern edge developments, but they understood that we needed more housing, and they were perhaps comforted by the idea that this would add a new, softer edge to the village. I don't regard 4-storey flats as a softer edge to the village. Do you?
You're welcome to that opinion.
I'm sorry, is it something a bit weird? Having 4-storey, is that a soft edge to the village?
So, and you'll understand that the planning team have worked with the developers to indeed create some softer edge by having a... Well, you're raising your eyebrows as though everything I'm saying is wrong. So we can perhaps take this debate offline, because I'm clearly not going to convince you of anything. But one of the things that we do need in the village is higher density housing for people who live here currently, who are having children, who would like their children to be able to stay in the village. We have, if you look at the housing needs assessment, we haven't got that. So one of the things that was responded to in the parish council meetings that I've been to and other meetings is actually a desire to have smaller density dwellings, so 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings that people can actually afford. And those apartments will provide that. So in general, and I don't argue the case that there is a case to say you want to limit the height of apartment blocks, but we have plenty of 3-storey apartments.
These are 4-storey. So the village design statement.
Yes, I know that there's another.
Can I intervene at this point, please? I can understand the frustration and everything with this, but at this point can I ask for this to be taken outside of this and discuss a further issue, because we have got some other things that we need to discuss. Thank you very much for your input.
Can I just say, if it was any comfort, the parish council at its last planning committee meeting did decide to challenge this decision on the grounds that it was a departure from the local plan. Particularly, we're aware that at the 80 houses was the guideline. We consider that doubling it was sufficiently large to be a material departure, and also that it represents a material departure of policy H8, which refers to instances of up to 40 as being only permissible on Cambridge fringes or in new developments, neither of which Sawston manifesto is.
Of course, what we've got is the previous administration's local plan, and the plans that were in it coming forward for us to implement. It's been too late.
Yes.
For changes to be made. The time for those changes to be made were earlier in the process.
The original plan was for 80 houses. When you say it's too late, it's been dropped on us.
It's regarding the original plan and the previous administration, they did put it together, but it didn't have to be voted for, they could have voted against it. So there was that issue as well coming into that. I would ask that rather than have a tennis game going on here between. No, we can take this matter outside of this meeting, and if you like to continue your communication and also with the parish, that would be absolutely fine.
Has anybody else got any questions? Oh,
So I want to return to what Reg was saying. The Cambridge Evening News site, when it was talking about the historic conservation area, specifically with the drying shed, and what you're talking about with the council, I would like if you could make representations to Historic England, because it's all Historic England's fault why we do not have this drying shed preserved. And if you read the press reports that have come out from Historic England, it makes it sound like it was all local councils that have stopped this being restored.
It's been worked on for
Decades.
But the inference from all the stuff that's come out at the minute is that Historic England, oh no, we tried to save this and the locals have stopped it. And you're letting Historic England get away with this. And if, as councillors,
I'm not sure we're letting them get away with it.
But they have done, because for 20 years, we take the scaffolding down now, it'll fall apart.
There was a meeting with the old administration regarding that, and I attended that meeting, and the Historic England's legal team were there. And I basically turned around and said, you're 30 years too late. And they tried to follow off saying that the district council had a duty to put this right, and I argued, no, they don't. It's an issue with Historic England that you were addressed at that time and you turned your back on it. Get out of that one. And I fully understand the pressures and the implications that they've got at the district now. Because as far as I'm aware, there's also another problem that's cropped up out that somebody wants to keep it going, and there's two issues going on at once with that. So I take on board what you've said, and yes, they have conveniently passed it on as if to say it's not our fault, but actually the community has been fully engaged with this all the time. And so that's a very flippant statement from them, I would put forward.
Yes, I fully support everything you've said, Mark, because one of the issues, certainly when it last came round, which was in the early 2000s, there was the inflexibility of English heritage, as it was, to consider any modification of the interior. And as you're aware, the floors are about 5 feet apart, which means it's effectively unusable for anything other than its original purpose. And partly because of that inflexibility, it was virtually impossible to arrive at an acceptable scheme when the building was much more substantial than it is now.
And the recent deterioration.
Can I just temporarily interrupt? Can I ask for an extension of time, please?
Half an hour.
Half an hour, thank you. Do I have a second up?
Yes.
All those in favour? Yes. Please carry on, Brian.
I was just going to reinforce that since the last sort of review, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago, of that order, the brickwork and stonework has deteriorated and so on, so got in an even worse state. So, is that covering your point?
Yes, I just like you to kick them rather than kick the council.
Sure. Roger?
Yes, you know what trouble I've had with my neighbour.
Yes.
So but the letter he gave me, they give him permission to do the accent, but he can cover up to 50% of his land for building. And that without planning permission. So surely that's the same down there. They've got to do what they like. I phoned up the council, planning people, and they've agreed with it. He can cover up to 50% of his grounds. As long as it's in the curvature of his land, he can cover up to 50% of that. And the planning have agreed to it. And there's nothing we can do about it.
So that's an enforcement issue, isn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, I've passed the information.
He's all looking into it.
Well,
That's what they said on that payment, didn't they?
I've passed it on to enforcement, who
are
investigating it. So they're doing what they should be for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm not getting it wrong, and that. I'm just saying, the council planning people do what they want.
It's nice.
I know we're not tonight, but you don't stand earthly chance.
Move it, Thank you very much for that, Roger.
Anybody else?
He can't do more than report it and give them the occasional chase up.
Are there any more Richmonds?
I'll bring a few more if you like.
Are there any more questions for the councillors? I would like to take this opportunity for thanking them for coming for their report and also thanking them for their work for the last year. It's not easy, believe you me. They have to come in at a pretty rough time as well, I would say, with everything that's going on.
It's not great. It's not great at council.
But yeah, as I said, thank you very much for doing the job that you're doing. Right, moving on to issues from the public. Any issues that anyone would like to talk about?
I haven't got an issue, but I didn't know whether you guys had anything to do with knowing what's going on with Barclays. So, because it must be very close to you.
As far as we're aware, they've been going into it, they've been making some inquiries, and it's going to be Pat the Trust stroke Al.
Yeah, it's on their website as well.
It's on their website.
It's on their
So something will.
Yeah, so something's happening with it.
I think the only cautionary note is, other people have investigated it and then walked away. So,
they are the third.
Yes.
They are the third person.
So all I'm saying is that if the track record clearly isn't great. So I don't know whether this is issues with technically what's inside it, or whether it's to do with the leasehold or assignment to the lease. The ownership is.
And I don't suppose we can flatten it and have a bit of parking.
Well, the thing is coming back to the point that Brian made, it's far more complex than that, because there were two developers that did go in and have a look at it. Actually, there were three, because one of them was the district council itself looked at it. And the issue is with such a short-term lease, they wanted to. The idea was to buy it outright. And it's very complex the way the lease has been structured and set up. It involves offshore accounts and God knows what else. And they would not budge on it. And that's why that opportunity was. And Brian's absolutely spot on. We've been there before, and it's just a case of waiting to see what's this space be.
So Sainsbury's still have the lease.
It will just fall down eventually. So
it's with the lease is with the Virgin Islands offshore company. It's very difficult to get any information about. So they're basically going through the agents, and of course Sainsbury's, quite frankly, are clearly not bothered about the cost to them of paying for the lease with an empty building, and that's the disappointment. And really, if this Papworth stroke Owl doesn't go through, we may want to resort to a bit of people pressure and get back to Sainsbury's and say, what on earth are you doing?
One thing I will say is the parish council have been very active on it. The district council has been, and the councillors have been extremely active on it and working and trying. I know Brian's been, for the last 2 years, been trying to find out what's going on, and the previous administration before that did as well. So the bottom line is we all know it's a really horrible eyesore in the centre of the village, and it's not good as you come in from any direction. It doesn't look good. But as a council, as county councillors, as district councillors, we are all working in and trying to put in the right way to make sure that something, if comes forward with that. Any other? Mark?
Just a reminder, if I could get access to the speed camera data at some point.
To
the speed camera data.
Oh yes, that's Colin. Speak to this gentleman here. He'll be able to help you with that.
Yeah, there must be months of it by now.
Any other issues? Any other concerns from the general public? No? In that case, I will now go around and ask the councillors if there's any issues, starting with Neil.
Particularly disabled positions, people who are pushing prams, when they go along Morris on the lay-by side, there's tree roots in the middle. So when you go down Henry Morris, off to Green Road, right, when they go into the school especially, the people in the buggies and the disabled say there are tree roots, and there are tree roots right in the middle of the path. But there's no apparent tree that's within a, what I would call, area, so I'm not sure where they're coming from.
Right, we will find out who's responsible for that area of the land and take that up.
It's in the pathway.
Yeah. Anna. Colin.
Oh, good. I don't know. The parking restrictions down Church Lane, we know when that's going to happen?
It's
not yet, because it's coming back to us. It's coming back to another discussion, so it won't be yet.
And there has to be a local consultation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably be,
it's
surprised it happened before the auditors.
Very surprising. We're at variance with what they're proposing though.
Yeah, it's coming back to another meeting.
And various local residents and the community hall users as well have raised various issues about it. So it'll have to, as you say, go into consultation.
It has to be a formal consultation anyway, so.
Anything else, Colin? Jane? Ryan?
Doesn't matter.
Oh, come on. Think of something. David? Janet?
I just wanted to say something about picking up on the earlier discussion about neighbourhood plan and village design statement. It is very important that we finalise those two and also do more updated housing needs assessments, etc. Because the problem, as I see it, is that the housing development we have at the moment isn't necessarily friends for Sawston residents. We need to find out what we actually need and what that should be. So development neighbourhood plan, village design framework, and its enforcement is quite important. So that's something certainly I'll be carrying forward.
Excellent. And again, I'd like to thank you for your involvement of all this and the hard work you put in, as well as all the other councillors and the public that have done that as well. For me, mine's a bit of news really, is we had a meeting with the highways team, and it's all to do with Princess Drive and the road up there. It has come forward that they will now be doing some work on it. It will be resurfaced. It will be a 3-phase programme. We haven't got any dates or information on that, but basically we went to see where would be the best place to start. So it's one half of Princess Drive will be done. When they've got the funding, the second half will be done, and then the cul-de-sac in Woodlands Road will also be done. So that's a good result. While we were there, and I know this issue is particularly close to Brian's heart, is we spoke about the trees that were cut down in Mill Lane. And the county council have got a policy now where they do have to replace the tree, or they will replace the tree for the ones they cut down. But there is a but. What we can ask them, we can tell them where to put the trees, or where to put the trees. Don't go there.
It will be where the sun does shine.
Yes, the sun will shine. We will have a choice. Was it 3?
Well, I think the issue is where the trees down Mill Lane is that I don't think I'm waiting. They're going to confirm it right to me, but they won't. It looks like they won't replace the trees down where they were because of the footpath, etc. But what they're saying they'll do is they will give us trees to plant somewhere else. So they are replacing trees, but if they feel they shouldn't be replaced where they've been taken out, they won't.
What they do is they'll come out and do a safety issue on it.
So the avenue of trees that Tony was involved in planting when he was allowed.
I think it's because it's taken up on the footpath.
And presumably they also won't allow us to plant trees there.
No, because if it becomes a safety issue, for them it'll be a safety issue.
But they're going to come out again and we'll take it to
So it
another
was an
meeting.
issue for the 30 odd, 40 odd years
Yeah, well, you look at
I think what's going to happen is whether they're going to have to
There wasn't
replace
any
it.
county objection for the TPO either.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to another meeting.
There will be another meeting to discuss all those issues, but it was quite a positive meeting that we had regarding the Princess Drive, and hopefully we'll get something with the trees all sorted out.
When was the work done to Princess Drive? In the last 2 years?
What? When was the work done?
Yeah, some of it has been...
They've done part of Woodland Road.
Yeah, that was
Are they
only 2
going
years ago.
over some of that work?
The surfacing around Woodlands Road was done about 2.5 years ago, and then they stopped, and that's why we sort of jumped on it and started to push forward on that.
The dragon patch was there about 15 months ago, 14 months ago.
The dragon patch was there 1 week before the election.
So just over a year ago.
Literally 1 week before the election. And I just said to them, thank you very much for that, they're not welcome. So what they will be doing is they came along and there's drives there as well that they will be doing, and so the whole thing will be done, resurfaced and done properly. The issue that they have is the services underneath. It is a major concern for them. So they are moving forward with it and developing that. So on that matter, I'd like to thank everybody who turned up tonight. Thank you to the parish councillors. Thank you to everyone. And I close the meeting.